Well, there's a couple little small subtle things here where Kavoth a couple times in exasperation, charred body of God, what are you doing out here at this time of night? And Telu anyway. Have you had bad luck your whole life? So these little sayings, just like we would say, like God damn it, or Jesus Christ, dude. Like just they feel like that the way they're put in there. And I still remember the first time reading. I'm like charred body of God. So they had some type of, you know, religious figure that was burned. I don't know. This is just what jumps out at me. And then it's like Telu. So Telu's somebody. Telu's God or something like that. It's just those little pepperings, you know. And
Yeah,
you go past it, but you don't dwell on it, but it's there, you know.
yeah.
Those little cultural like proverbs or whatever.
It fleshes out the world, and like to have all these idioms, and then you learn. He gives you the idiom first, and then you learn where the idiom came from later.
It's great. I mean, that's such a great way to do it because I was gonna say to do it the opposite direction is not nearly as clever because he hasn't put it in your mind yet. To feed you first and then see, it's like, oh well, that's where that came from. It's like, yeah, it's it's still cleverly done.
Like he's putting so much on the audience where it's like he's just saying like, look, if you really want to get the most out of my writing, you're going to have to read it a second time because there's no fucking way you're going to read this charred body of God and this and that and all these idioms, and then you discover where the idioms came from 15 chapters later. You're not going to remember the first time it came up. It's just like subtly is put in your mind, so it's there, but you're not going to be thinking back to this chapter. And when you get to like chapter 23 or whatever, when Trappist tells the story of Telu and Menda. So like he puts all this stuff in there where he rewards people who go back through his book.
Well, it's partially that. Another way that I look at it is it's also respecting the reader. It's kind of like when even with filmmakers when they respect the audience to the effect that you're not showing them everything, when it's more subtly done. And he's doing it in an extraordinarily subtle way.
Yeah, he doesn't spoon feed you. He doesn't he doesn't go like, because he could easily go like, I said charred body of God, which is an idiom, which means da 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 da, and he could explain it, but he doesn't. He doesn't explain it at all. At no point in the book does he explain it. The only reason we know is because, you put two and two together because, we're not idiots. And anybody who's reading it can fucking figure that shit out. And he does that. He does that with minor things, and he does it with things that are more complicated. And he has subtle hints on things that are very complicated, which we'll get into, in further episodes. We'll get into some of the very subtle, very complicated clues that he leaves into the books, which represents bigger things. Like he layers his books with so many clues, so many subtle hints, so many world building events, and so many idioms, things like that. He's just, man, he does a really good job of trusting his audience to be able to figure shit out on their own.
Yeah, it's great. It's what to me puts that to me is what puts it on another level because of all those traits. And yeah, it's reward reading many times over. You get so much more out of it, which in my experience is quite rare.
Yeah, and I, just so you know, I miss out on a ton of that, but you mentioned its subtleties. It just it lays on you thick when you don't know what he's talking about really. But it's very evident.
Yeah. Once you're going back through it that second time, then you start like, you're just like almost every chapter you're like, oh shit, he wrote that, and that that is explained later on, and when you get to this chapter, and you just like the things that are more obvious, you start picking up on those, and then as you start picking up on more and more hints, then all of a sudden you just start putting the bigger pieces together. Like he created a puzzle that you can just go and read through both books and it's extremely enjoyable, or you can realize that the puzzle is way bigger. Like you could keep going. You could build way more than just reading it once.
It's pretty rare for me to be able to recommend a book to somebody and say, well, you need to read it more than once. Like that's,
yeah.
I haven't personally done that before. I just basically would recommend a book, but to be able to recommend something that should be read multiple times because it repays on those multiple rereads in such a great way. It's great. Obviously, that's
it's actually a great it's actually a great business plan for Rothfuss to, like build this huge world puzzle and then wait 10 years so people can dig at it before the next one comes out.
Yeah.
Get everybody else involved, have people like us doing podcasts and digging into it deep and deeper and deeper. And who knows what we found out, what we don't know yet.
It's clever. It's got to be extremely hard to write a book like that, to be able to hide the clues in plain sight and that kind of stuff. It's got to be very difficult to write that way.
Yeah, there's got to be a lot of I imagine the map of the book itself. It has got to be. I can't imagine how many rewrites, how many revisions, how many rewrites, how many times he's gone back and peppered things in.
Yeah, he's probably got a wall behind him like that guy from A Beautiful Mind, right?
According to him, it's almost all in his head. Like he takes some notes, but I remember Tim talking about like Tim kept telling me like he probably's got a huge board and all this kind of stuff, and then like I sent him a quote where Rothfuss like, nah, it's just all in my head, man. He's like, I take some notes.
I don't believe it.
I take some notes, but most of it is just all in my head.
Yeah, and then he's like, and it really didn't take that long. I just let you guys play.
Yeah.
It's right there.
Yeah, it wasn't really that hard either. It wasn't really that difficult.
Very easy. Wrote it in 3 months, but I just kept you hanging. Just kept you hanging for years.
That's another Seinfeld reference, George.
Yeah.
The Guggenheim.